The government money trick that controls your life will come back to Histroa Finance, the channel where history meets money and truth meets reality. Today, we're uncovering one of the biggest secrets in global economics, the financial tricks governments have used for centuries to keep ordinary people poor, dependent, and confused, while the elite grow richer and more powerful. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe, share this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the financial moves shaping your life. Now, let's unlock a part of history that most people never learn. Governments love to assure you that they are working for your financial freedom. They speak endlessly about stability, growth, and opportunity. They present themselves as guardians of prosperity, protectors of national wealth, and defenders of the average citizen. But if you examine history honestly and carefully, you find something far darker beneath the surface. Governments have always used subtle, hidden financial tricks to keep ordinary citizens struggling, while quietly gathering wealth and power at the top. And the most shocking part, these tricks are not inventions of the modern era. They are ancient, recycled, rebranded, and repackaged. The names change, the slogans change, the technology changes, but the mechanics of manipulation remain the same. These tactics have been used for thousands of years to do one thing: transfer wealth upward while the majority remains dependent and distracted. Let's begin with the oldest trick in the government playbook, a trick so ancient it predates most nations on earth. 1. Inflation. The silent thief. Inflation is often talked about as a natural part of economics, as if it simply appears like weather. But historically, inflation was not a natural event. It was a deliberate policy. When a government spends more than it can raise through taxes, it has two choices. Option 1, admit the truth and increase taxes openly, which risks public anger. Option 2, quietly reduce the value of the money citizens already hold. Most governments, from ancient empires to modern democracies, choose option 2. Ancient Rome provides one of the clearest examples. In the 3rd century AD, Rome faced enormous military expenses. Instead of cutting spending or raising taxes, emperors simply reduced the silver content in the denarius. The coin looked almost the same, but it was worth a fraction of its original value. The government pretended nothing had changed, but every Roman citizen paid the price. The value of savings collapsed. Inflation exploded. Workers demanded higher wages that couldn't keep pace with prices. Food became expensive. Living standards dropped. It was a tax, but a hidden one. A tax that could be blamed on economic forces instead of government policy. Fast forward to today, and the trick remains exactly the same, except now it's executed through central banks, quantitative easing, and money printing instead of metal coins. The names sound scientific and modern, but the effect is identical. Your money becomes worth less while the government's debt becomes easier to manage. That is not an accident. It is a strategy. 2. Forced loans. Coercion disguised as patriotism. During the Middle Ages, European monarchs perfected another financial trick, the forced loan. On paper, it sounded patriotic. Kings in England, France, and Spain told wealthy merchants and guilds that the nation needed their financial support. But these loans were not optional. Refusing to lend money to the crown meant fines, property seizure, or imprisonment. Many merchants understood the danger, so they surrendered their wealth, hoping that the king's promises of repayment were genuine. But repayment often came years late, in devalued currency, or not at all. The crown funded wars, palaces, and luxuries. The merchants absorbed the losses. This trick was built on coercion disguised as loyalty, a tactic that would be used repeatedly in the centuries to come. And if you think forced loans are a relic of the medieval world, consider this. During modern wars, governments pressure citizens to buy war bonds in the name of patriotism. During financial crises, citizens are told they must help save the economy by accepting new taxes or reduced benefits. The mechanism is different. The psychology is not. Point 3. The birth of national debt. A system designed for the wealthy. In 1694, Britain created the Bank of England. The official story says it was established to stabilize the economy. The truth is far simpler. The government needed money to fight France, and wealthy investors were willing to lend it for a price. Investors bought government bonds and received guaranteed interest payments funded by taxes. But who paid those taxes? Not the wealthy, not the investors. It was ordinary citizens who bought daily goods like salt, beer, and cloth. In other words, the rich lent money to the government and earned interest. The poor paid taxes to fund that interest. This system was brilliant for the wealthy. It institutionalized upward wealth transfer inside a structure that looked official, patriotic, and responsible. And today, the safest investments in the world are still government bonds, backed not by resources, not by gold, but by taxes taken from the working population. 4. Deficit spending, the debt trap that never ends. Modern politicians promote deficit spending as a tool for progress. They say it funds infrastructure, job growth, education, and economic stability. But a closer look reveals the same ancient pattern. Governments borrow huge sums of money, investors, banks, and foreign powers buy these bonds. When the debt matures, governments rarely repay it honestly. They either raise taxes on ordinary citizens, inflate the currency, borrow even more, or cut social benefits. Each solution pushes the cost downward and the profits upward. Governments rarely cut corporate subsidies. They rarely reduce high-level salaries or military budgets, but they routinely reduce public welfare, retirement benefits, and social services. The trick is convincing people that the debt is for them, even though they are the ones who eventually repay it. 5. Bailouts. Privatize the gains, socialize the losses. If there is one trick that perfectly encapsulates modern economics, it is the bailout. In 2008, major banks took reckless financial risks. They packaged toxic mortgages into complex financial products and sold them around the world. When the system collapsed, the banks should have failed. That is how capitalism is supposed to work. Instead, governments used taxpayer money to rescue them. Ordinary citizens lost homes, jobs, and savings. Banks emerged larger, richer, and more powerful. The trick was simple. When the rich win, they keep the profits. When they lose, you pay the bill. And because the public was told this was necessary to save the system, they accepted it. 6. Pension promises. The generational Ponzi scheme of government retirement programs like Social Security in the U.S. or pension systems across Europe were created with good intentions, but over time, they became unsustainable. Most people assume the money they pay into the system is saved for their future. In reality, governments spend that money immediately and replace it with IOUs. They hope future taxpayers will cover the cost. But as populations age and birth rates decline, the math collapses. When the bill finally comes due, governments reform the system by raising the retirement age, reducing benefits, or inflating the currency. Again, the burden falls on ordinary citizens. The trick repeats. The government promises security, but delivers scarcity. 7. Quantitative easing, money printing for the elite. After the 2008 crisis, governments and central banks introduced a term most people had never heard: quantitative easing. It sounds complex intentionally, but the concept is simple. The central bank prints money and uses it to buy financial assets. Here's what happened. Stocks rose. Real estate surged. Bond values climbed. Corporate assets ballooned. But who owns most of these assets? The wealthy. For the average citizen without significant investments, the benefits were tiny. Meanwhile, inflation eventually appeared, raising living costs. The financial elite gained massively. The public paid through higher prices. This was not a fix. It was a transfer. 8. Stealth taxation. Hidden ways governments take your money. Governments avoid raising income taxes because it draws criticism. Instead, they use stealth taxes, inflation, sales taxes, fuel duties, and small fees that people barely notice. When inflation rises faster than wages, you lose purchasing power. That loss is a hidden tax. Governments love inflation because it reduces the real value of their debts and increases their tax revenue automatically, without publicly raising taxes. This is why many governments quietly welcome moderate inflation, even when citizens suffer from rising prices. 9. Regulatory capture. When corporations control the regulations are supposed to protect citizens, but history reveals how the most powerful industries influence the regulators meant to oversee them. Railroad barons controlled transportation. Regulators, oil giants influenced energy policies. Modern tech companies shape digital regulations. Financial institutions help write banking laws. The public sees protection. The corporations see profit. Governments claim they are regulating industries. In reality, industries often regulate themselves through the government. 10. War finance. Permanent debt from temporary wars. Through history, wars have always been sold as temporary emergencies. Citizens are urged to financially support the nation through war bonds, taxes, or patriotic spending, but war debt never disappears. The financial costs last decades longer than the wars themselves. The Iraq and Afghanistan wars cost trillions, much of it funded through borrowing. Defense contractors earned billions. Banks profited from managing debt. Bondholders enjoyed safe returns, and who repays that debt? Future taxpayers. War has always been one of the most profitable financial tricks ever invented. 11. Complexity as camouflage. And of the most powerful tricks governments use is complexity. Tax codes thousands of pages long. Financial instruments so complex that even professionals struggle to explain them. Budgets buried in jargon and obscure line items. Complexity is not accidental. It is camouflage. When you cannot see how wealth moves, you cannot resist its transfer. In ancient Rome, the debased coin was a physical sign of manipulation. Today, the manipulation is buried in spreadsheets, balance sheets, and economic language that keeps ordinary people confused and dependent. 12. Why these tricks matter today. All of these tricks, inflation, debt, bailouts, stealth taxes, regulatory capture, are alive right now. They are not historical artifacts. They are operating in the background of your daily life. Inflation weakens your savings. Debt burdens future generations. Bailouts rescue corporations, not citizens. Quantitative easing inflates asset bubbles you can't afford. Complexity prevents you from understanding the system. The result is predictable. You work harder while gaining less real wealth. The elite work smarter while gaining more. The cycle repeats because the public does not study history, and governments prefer it that way. Financial education is one of the most powerful tools of resistance. Economic history is one of the sharpest weapons against manipulation. When you recognize the tricks, you become much harder to exploit. History does not repeat exactly, but its patterns do. The tricks used on Roman citizens are the same tricks used on you today. Only the branding has changed. The question is whether you recognize them in time. If this breakdown opened your eyes, make sure you subscribe to Histroa Finance, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who needs to understand how money and power really work. Tell us in the comments what topic you want us to cover next, and we'll make a full video on your favorite subject. This is Histroa Finance, where history becomes your financial power. See you in the next video.